Hi, I'm Bruce Mazzie, and welcome to This Old Car.
This week on This Old Car, Bruce Mazzie gets a look at a Jowett Jupiter. That's right, I said a Jowett Jupiter. A 56 Corvette, some early Mopar products, and the Honda Goldwing motorcycle, complete with sidecar and trailer. Welcome back to This Old Car. As we return to Brookville, Maryland, Bruce gets his first look at a 1951 Jowett Jupiter.
And who are you, sir?
I'm Huntley Perry. I live near Laytonsville, Maryland. And I have a 1951 Jowett Jupiter. Jowett started building cars in England about 1906. And after World War II, they came out with a four-door sedan called a Javelin. And in 1950, they came out with the Jupiter sports car, which used the engine and the running gear off of the Javelin sedan. There's torsion bar suspension in front. The torsion bars run fore and aft, and there's torsion bar suspension in the back, where the torsion bars run across the chassis. And the water pump is up front, and then you have a fan shaft going back to the fan in front of the radiator, so it's an overhead fan shaft engine. They were raced at the 24-hour race at Le Mans, France, and they won their class in 1950, 51, and 52. The company went out of business in 1954.
It's unusual in that it looks somewhat like a Subaru engine. It's a four-cylinder opposing flat engine, or an aviation engine for that matter.
This summer, the Jupiter Club in England went back to Le Mans, France to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the first win. Unfortunately, my Jupiter was not ready to go, but we were there anyway, and they had 39 Jupiters at the rally. There were about 899 standard Jupiters built. This is number 100 out of the 899. There were also 3 R1 factory race cars built and 3 R4s, which were the prototypes for the new production car, which never went into production, of course.
Here comes the winner, George Weaver, in his Jupiter. He's averaged 68.95 miles per hour.
Things go better with Coke. Look at this. Well, it doesn't hold a cold drink. It holds a couple of cool people. Isn't that something? We'll be having a look in the future at somebody who collects Coke memorabilia, and I bet he'd love to have this. Why don't you tell us how you put this all together? What do you actually have here?
Okay, we've got a 95 Honda Goldwing SE. It's top of the line, fully loaded, from Marysville, Ohio. That's where Honda makes them exclusively for worldwide distribution out of Marysville, Ohio. The Champion sidecar, the model is an Escort, a single-seater out of Huntington Beach, California. And the trailer is Turbo Plus 2, made by Bush Tech Manufacturing in Jacksboro, Tennessee. So they're all 3 pieces made in America. The fascination of sidecars is there's not a lot of us out there. It generates a lot of interest at car shows, but it generates a lot of interest if we're going to 7-Eleven, we're going to Safeway. We'll go someplace in a rig and we'll come out and there'll be people standing around looking at a sidecar because they don't know what they are. And the funny thing is, it generates a lot of interest of people who are a lot older than we are. World War II veterans will come around and talk about having sidecar rigs in the Second World War. You know, they weren't quite like this, naturally, but it helps them reminisce, and you can see it in their eyes that they're reliving their youth in their brains by looking at a sidecar rig. So it kind of helps a lot. It makes me feel good that they're giving them some of their youth back.
Now, it looks like this is modern materials in these pieces of equipment, though. This looks like fiberglass or some composite material rather than metal.
Right. The bodies on all of them are laminated fiberglass. The sidecar and the trailer have rolled steel, powder-coated frames. And then same way with the motorcycle, all the body parts, most of them are plastic or fiberglass. The only metal is on the drivetrain, the engine, and some of the framework of it, but most of it's fiberglass. And that helps keep the weight down, because even as it is, the bike weighs over 900 pounds. So there's a lot of weight in the bike, and the whole rig is about, with loaded with my wife and gear and stuff, we're looking at 1,400 to 1,500 pounds.
Wow. How about braking? You have braking on all 5 wheels to touch the ground?
No, there's the only braking that's on the bike. You could get a brake system on the sidecar, but the bike is so heavy, and it's got 2 rotors on the front and 1 on the rear, that I really don't have any problem bringing it under control. And it's never going to fall down. It's not like a motorcycle where it's going to slide out from you, because it's got 2 tracks. So I can almost lock them up and come to a screeching halt if I have to. I don't want to do a lot, but it'll do it.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
We're at Brookville, Maryland, talking to Bill Dorsey about his 1956 silver and black Chevy Corvette.
Bill just picked it up. He's been a member of this club. But this Chevrolet Corvette's been made since 1954. Bill, why don't you tell us about the car?
Okay, well, I bought the car about a month ago, and the car is a 56, but it has a 57 drivetrain in it. It has a 283 V8 with a 4-speed transmission. It came from the factory. I checked the serial numbers out with a 265 with a Paraglide transmission, so it has a 57 drivetrain. The car was originally delivered in Delaware, and it spent about 5 years in Delaware, and then it went from Delaware to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And a lady had bought it about 20 years ago.
That's where it ran out of gas.
That's where we couldn't fill it up because we couldn't find a gas tank. But anyway, the lady that lived in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, bought it, and she had it restored. The color is not the original color combinations. It's the 57 color combinations reversed. And of course, that should be silver. And the car should be black. It's just reversed. And the same way with the dashboard, the trim around the dashboard, that should be silver.
Do you plan to put this back the way it's supposed to go, or are you going to just drive it?
I plan to drive it for about a year and then do all the little things to make it as perfect as I can make it.
It's a beautiful car. I do remember some of them being silver. When did they introduce silver paint?
The silver was introduced, I believe, in '57. Trunk. You see the original, the shroud for the distributor for the coil.
Show me that.
Right here, this chrome shroud runs all the way down under, behind the block and up around to the spark plug wire, the looms, and the stainless steel spark plug protectors and loom protectors are down on both sides.
What role does that shield play?
Well, it helps the longevity or the life of the wiring harness. Since these cars run so hot, there's not a lot of ventilation that comes through these engine compartments, so that helps that.
Well, a cameraman likes Plymouths, and we found one here. This is a 32 four-door sedan. What's interesting about this car is it has hydraulic brakes. Now, I don't know whether it's original or whether it was a feature that was added later on, but it sure looks like it was original, so it may have been one of the first cars with hydraulics. This is Ed E02. He's the owner of this 1932 Plymouth, and unusual car, very nice shape. Tell us about it, Ed.
This is a PB model 32. It's one of less than 50 left in the world. What's unusual about the car is its color combination. It has, even though when it was new it only cost $500, it has unusual features such as the pinstriping, the extra molding, the large fenders, the chrome features, so forth and so on, that made it very unusual. The interior is all mohair panels, all mohair covers. This interior molding is called a fretwork, where this is all painted to make it look like an old-fashioned piece of light grain and dark grain mahogany. The car has a type of footrest in it that you'd find in a larger, more expensive type of automobile to keep you sliding to the front. It came with a car diaper, which is a piece of plastic canvas that you unrolled underneath. It picked up all your oil and spots in the driveway. Just a piece of roll-up material.
Incredible.
It has hydraulic brakes, which is new for 1932. It has a vacuum advance in the starting. It just runs good. It runs
Wonderful.
very
Yeah,
well.
one of the things we noticed when we first came up here was hydraulic brakes. And Chrysler and Plymouth had those early. The gentleman next to you here said they were introduced in 1931. I know Ford came out with hydraulics in 39.
One of the interesting things about these particular cars, let me step in front of you, is that most of these cars up to 1932 had a piece of vinyl in the center. And the reason they had that piece of vinyl, they didn't have machines large enough to stamp a one-piece roof. So these cars are made in pieces, and they seam this piece of oil-soaked canvas, linen, waxy material. And then directly underneath this is an actual piece of chicken wire, about 1 inch, 8-sided chicken wire, and that was the antenna. The antenna sat inside of there, and you could get this car with a radio, you could get it with an optional heater, you could get it with optional trumpet horns, you could get it with an optional chrome radiator.
Let's run this thing. This old straight line 6, nice and smooth.
Anyway, it's a fun car. It also has gaiters underneath it, which are you might be able to, that might reflect back, but what that is there's a cover here that covers the leaf spring, and these are made out of leather. And what that does, it wraps the spring. There was a lubricant you put in there that kept the car from ever squeaking, and this car does not squeak because of that. Also underneath, I've completely repainted the car to its black finish from the factory. The whole front end is painted. Everything is a semi-gloss black underneath.
Did you paint it yourself?
No, I just had the car repainted. Had the front and the back repainted last year. The car was originally restored by a fellow in Maryland about 16 years ago. And I've spent the last 2 years redetailing, painting the underneath, and polishing and detailing everything underneath the hood.
What do you figure the value of this car is?
About $20,000.
Nice. It's like an 401k.
Well, it'll always be worth it. It's an investment.
Well, we found the owner to this nice 1932 Chrysler Coupe, Greg Cox. This is a fine piece of something you rarely see at these shows, dominated by Ford and Chevy. Tell us a little bit about it. Where did you get it? What have you done to it?
It's a very unusual car for the fact that it's they took these cars and used the parts to restore the Imperials. So it's very rare to find a 32 coupe like this, especially with a rear mount spare that's intact. And I found it in a body shop, sitting under a tree, up to its frame rails in mud. And I approached the owner. I said, "Do you want to sell it?" He said, "I don't own it." And I got the owner eventually, and he had broken both his arms. He sold it to me about 15 years ago.
You sure you didn't break both his arms to get it?
No, he was a retired Navy captain, and he sold it to me, and it's an ongoing process to restore it. When I got it, it was a basket case pretty much. Had a cracked block, had one gauge in it from the Mack truck, temperature gauge, had a frame, fenders, body cowl.
How much of the work do you do yourself?
I did about 50%. White Post Restoration painted it, did body work, nickels on it.
Yeah, White Post Restorations is in Virginia, and we're going to visit that facility sometime in the near future.
Yeah, Billy Thompson did a lot of the work on it. That was years ago. When we first started, I knew him when he was baling hay, and I took it down, no problem. But it's everything, you always look for something better. You go to swap meets, and well, that's better than what I have, and you try to find it. And Body parts are really difficult to find for the car. Mechanical parts aren't a problem, but body parts are difficult to find because there's so few of them left. I researched it about, I guess, 5 or 6 years ago, and there's 8 of these left of this body style that I could find.
Well, the contribution you're making to motor history is significant then. I mean, I have a 34 Ford Roadster, and it's pretty simple to find body parts for those. You must have made a lot of them, but and they're remanufacturing fenders and so forth. But I know these cars are rare, and we rarely see one this nice. I mean, this is a fine piece of work.
And the other thing with the Fords, they're interchangeable, some of the parts. These are not. Like you get 32 Plymouth, it won't interchange with this. Each style had its own body, own dimensions, everything was to that car, that was it. You couldn't take a part of the Plymouth and put it on the Chrysler. So that for me very hard to find parts for. But mechanically they kept the same for years and years and years, the block.
How does it run?
Fantastic, it amazes me. I'll put it in the garage and I'll leave it alone for 2 or 3 months, start it right up. It was smooth as glass.
I notice you have hydraulic brakes.
Yeah.
Was that on the car originally?
Yep. It had hydraulic brakes, rubber-mounted engine. A lot of innovations Chrysler did. The brakes is the main. The hydraulic brakes as opposed to the drum brakes. Because Ford had drums till I think 37 or 38. Mechanicals, that's right. And Chrysler had in 31 went to hydraulics. He was an engineer.
Well, Chrysler was always known for its engineering.
Engineering, yes.
Had some troubling years, but they produce a nice vehicle.
And the styling. They had very nice styles. And it runs great.
Next, we're going to stop by and see Old Car John Krapinski, and look at his vintage restorations.
John's going to show us some of his inventory here. He's got a 1930 Model A Ford and a few other pieces in the garage. John.
This is a 1930 Model A. I completed this in '97. It's won its junior and senior in AACA.
The AACA, or the Antique Automobile Club of America, is the mother of all car clubs, antique car clubs in the United States. And they certify all these cars with a junior and senior award or preservation award that gives them their credential or their pedigree, and it has a tremendous influence on the price at which they're sold. As I mentioned earlier, these cars are sold like other investments in gold or silver, other commodities. Then under that, there are many other clubs. There's the orphan clubs for Studebakers and Hudsons. There's the early Ford V8 Club, the Model A Ford Club, the Thunderbird Club, the Corvette Club, Studebaker Club, you name it. General Motors cars, Mopar, and all of these separate clubs have activities and buy and sell these products. And the pedigree comes from the clubs that do the judging at the certain meets. They not only give out trophies, but they certify that the car was properly restored, which has an influence on the price. In this particular case, John said it has the AACA Senior, which is the highest award you can get for the restoration of a Model A Ford. The engine is simple. It's a 4-cylinder engine, and in 1932, when Henry Ford introduced the V8, it almost looks as if he took 2 4-cylinder engines and put them in a V shape and ran them around a drive shaft or crank, and ran 2 4s, almost like 2 4s side by side. It's a very reliable engine, got a very simple carburetor on the bottom in black, and distributors on the top, almost looks like a little teapot. The gasoline went in the top here on the cowl and was gravity fed, so you didn't need a fuel pump. Exhaust system and intake manifold all on the right-hand side of the engine. Very simple, but very reliable, and a car with a pretty powerful little engine. Still about 500,000 Model A's on the road around the world. Nice car, John. Let's look at some of this other stuff you have here. Now you have to be honest, John, and tell the folks that the Metropolitan belongs to your wife.
Right.
When I was in high school, one of my friends had one of these, and we all went over to his house one night and turned it around and put it sideways in his driveway, and it barely fit, in the garage rather, bumper to bumper.
This is a 1960 Nash Metropolitan. It was produced from 1954 to 62. Approximately 95,000 of them were made. The car was designed by Nash in the United States and was produced in England by Austin. You know, it's verified right here, the chassis and the serial number with American Motors, and also, you know, the Made in England tag, which is Austin running gear. But the same engine was put in the MG, which they had SU carburetors on it, which made it a lot faster. You know, you could soup up this engine. It was a basic same engine, but this one was made for economy. In 1960, this car would get 35 to 40 miles to a gallon. It was a compact car ahead of its time. No matter what color you had, they were real popular, bright colors. All had the same interior, black and white. Standard shift, which was prevalent at the time. This trunk lid wasn't put on in Metropolitans until 1956. From 54 to 56, you had a solid back end. The only access you had was through the back seat, which is still can be done here. There's actually locking, the back seat actually flips down. But it is a sizable trunk. It's deep. I had a 55 Thunderbird. You have more room in here than you do in a Thunderbird.
They weren't that expensive, as I recall.
$1,600, a little over $1,600. But at the same time, you could buy a 1960 Ford for $2,000. A big car.
I like this 50 Ford convertible you have here, John. Wait a second. Well, it's too rich for my blood anyway.
This is a 100 horsepower V8 Ford flathead. This car was getting up into modern cars in 1950. 49, they changed the body style from the old boxy looking cars, and Ford outsold everybody else.
I think it was the first time, too.
Yeah,
Chevy was a big seller in those days, and this is the first year that Ford outsold
It was a modern-looking car with the enclosed, you know, the fenders, part of the body, no separate fenders. Which, again, you know, was a popular car then. Today, it's a popular car also.
Now, before leaving Old Car John, let's take a look at his beautifully restored 1950 Mercury, sporting a 255 cubic inch V8, delivering up to 10 more horsepower than its sister Ford. Because of the Mercury's unique body styling, better known as the bathtub, they were unable to produce this model in a hardtop. To entice buyers, they introduced the Mercury Monterey with a slightly lower body styling and tons of extra features, all for $157 more. The car became a legend after film star James Dean drove it in the cult movie classic, Rebel Without a Cause. Now we can see what brings the rebel out in John Krapinski and his restoration classic 1950 Mercury. We'll be right back after this.
Well, that's it for now. We're going to follow up in the future with progress on Buzz Potter's 1935 Ford Phaeton, and we'll look at some other cars, some street rods, where some of these fellows are turning old sheet metal into new and modern cars with air conditioning, and power steering, power brakes, and so forth. Well, that's it for this old car. Thanks.
Thanks for watching This Old Car. Bruce will be back next week with more great classic cars, fact-filled interviews, and restoration tips. Until next week, I'm Chuck Baker for This Old Car.